The House will come to order. Conference Committee reports on House files.
Conference Committee report on House File number 1830, an act relating to state government financing. The report is addressed to the Honorable Melissa Hortman, Speaker of the House, the Honorable Bobby Joe Champion, President of the Senate. We, the undersigned conferees for House File number 1830, report that we've agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The report is signed by 4 of the 5 members on the part of the House and 5 of the 5 members on the part of the Senate. Klevorn moves that the report of the Conference Committee on House File number 1830 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
I recognize the maker of the motion, the member from Hennepin, Representative Klevorn, who will explain the report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, today it's a great honor to be before you to seek your support for this important legislation regarding the state government and our elections. I'm going to speak today about the state and local government portions of the Conference Committee report and then yield to Chair Freiberg to address the elections provision in the bill. It's important to note that from the start, this legislation is bipartisan and bicameral work. The state and local government touches many aspects of our life, and the 2023 State and Local Government Finance Bill funds the offices of the state constitutional officers, the legislature, over 30 state agencies, boards, commissions, and councils, including Management and Budget, Minnesota IT Services, the Department of Revenue, and the Department of Administration. Minnesotans value good government. This legislation contains strategic, prudent, targeted funding of state and local government, a solid foundation for government that serves all Minnesotans. With this bill, we will begin to rectify years of disinvestment. This bill will offset prior funding gaps and allow agencies to provide needed services for Minnesotans. I'd like to just list a few bipartisan highlights that this bill includes, starting with modernization of IT systems, cybersecurity investments, grants oversight management, our management oversight, and I'd like to thank Lead Nash and Representative Hudella for their work in grants management oversight. You will also see in this bill fraud and special investigation staffing at the Office of the Attorney General. There are investments in land survey monuments, funding for public television and Amper's education radio. There are market bucks for healthy eating here and at home. Electronic auditing tools that will help serve our counties and townships. Historic site asset preservation, funding for Farm America, and expanding business services division of the Secretary of State's office. I'm just going to name a few of the equity provisions that are included in this bill as well. There are investments in translation and accessibility services, Indigenous Peoples Day and the 2023 effective date for Juneteenth, the Private Cemeteries Act, which protects the dignity of Indigenous human remains. There is the establishment of the LGBTQIA2S Council. There are provisions for retaining state employees with disabilities. This bill also reestablishes funding for the Office of Women's Economic Status, and it provides for an economic disparities in state procurement study. And last, and one of my favorites, is the Legislative Task Force on Aging. There are many important provisions in this bill, but most importantly, we know that Minnesotans expect and deserve government to work, and they expect and deserve government to meet their needs without delay and without interruption. Mr. Chair, I'd also like to just take a moment before I yield the floor to the Chair of Elections to just thank our staff for their hard work. I'd like to begin with nonpartisan staff, our dedicated individuals, Helen Roberts, Matt Gehring, and Chelsea Griffin. And I would like to thank our GOP researchers, Ryan Wickershon and Laurie Cousineau, our DFL team, Amanda Rudolph, John Baylor, Jonah Westerman, Simon Brown, and Mike Hermanson. And to our conferees, without you, we could not do this important work. Lead Nash, I tip my hand to you. Elections Chair Freiberg, Vice Chair Emma Greenman, State and Local Government Vice Chair Hewitt. Thank you for your hard work. The entire team has worked together tirelessly to make this legislation better, and I thank you all for your great service. And I'd like to yield now to Chair Freiberg.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Freiberg, to explain the conference report.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Chair Klevorn. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to work with you, and I second all of your thanks for staff as well. In the area of elections, there were many provisions in the House and Senate that were identical or similar. I discussed many of those when the bill went off the House floor, so I won't reiterate everything, but I can certainly answer questions if any members have any. So I will highlight the most significant changes related to elections policy and the budget. And starting with the budget, a big item on the elections portion was the inclusion of the voter fund. The conference committee accepted the House position on the funding mechanism. This is the source of funding for local governments to have funding for election infrastructure and staffing. The cities preferred the House approach to this bill, to this language. The Secretary of State did as well, so I was very happy that our language prevailed in terms of that, and there is a $2.5 million appropriation for that as well. We included a bill from Representative Hicks creating some accessibility grants for polling places, and an increase in the public subsidy was included as well. We know that public financing of elections can help reduce the influence of special interests in elections. So more people, more candidates will access the public subsidy and public financing system because of this increase. On the policy front, there were a few significant changes that I want to highlight. The conference report changes the boundaries of some legislative districts. There's a change to the Senate district boundaries in Douglas County that was included in the bill when it went off the House floor, but there are two new ones. There's a change to the House district boundaries that put the city of North St. Paul back into one legislative district. And there is a change affecting the city of Glencoe that was requested by the Secretary of State's office. There was a discontiguous part of the city of Glencoe with only 2 voters in it. They were in a different legislative district than the rest of the city, so they required their own precinct and ballots, which could potentially reveal how they voted. So we were able to make this fix to ensure the privacy of those voters. There was a change to the provision related to major parties. We adopted a Senate provision providing that major parties must certify that they held at least 45 local endorsing conventions. And going forward, we raised the threshold to 8% in a statewide election to gain major party status. And this was close to the House position of 10%. Included in the bill is a Secretary of State voting study. This will be a study led by the Secretary of State on improvements to the election system, which may include ranked choice voting. Finally, we included a House provision that Representative Davis offered as an amendment prohibiting compensation for absentee ballot applications based on the number of applications received. This was a good provision, so we decided to include it. The Senate agreed. There are already many provisions in the bill with bipartisan support, but the inclusion of this amendment cements this bill as strongly bipartisan, and I look forward to receiving extensive support from both sides of the aisle. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions members may have, and thank you for your time, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on the motion to adopt the conference committee report for House File 1830. I recognize the member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm excited to see so many full seats over there to talk about the state government finance bill, because we all love that bill the most. I will share this with you. I was asked by a number of the press on the way in today if my intention was to make a motion to refuse to adopt. And I said no. And I have said no to the body a number of times, and I'll tell you why. And I will give a lot of credit to Chair Klevorn. She has treated me quite well and our team on the state government finance quite well. We don't agree on a lot of things that are in this bill. We don't. However, you can disagree agreeably, and I think that for those of you on the DFL side, you should look to her for how you set the bar moving forward as to how you treat the minority party, both in committee and in conference committee. Because a number of times where there were things that were coming that could be objectionable to our side of the aisle, she would call me or pull me aside or come over here and say, hey, she always calls me Lead Nash, this is coming and I wanted you to be aware of this. So that's a great model for you to all go to school on, because you can be fair to one another, even though the other side doesn't have the votes to change much, but we at least get to have our voice. And I had said this, and I'm paraphrasing, and she sometimes nods and sometimes nods yes or no, but when we first started, I said, well, you know, I'm the only Republican member on the conference committee. My vote doesn't matter, and neither does my voice. She says, no, your vote may not matter, but your voice does. And I will say that that actually played out correctly. I was consulted on a number of things. We worked together on a number of things. There is minute language in here that I introduced, and she worked with me to make sure that we overcame some hurdles. I offered the Representative Bahner bill language because it didn't move in the Senate because they're the Senate, and I was able to get it into the bill here. But also we worked together very closely on the language that Representative Hudella and myself and Chair Klevorn got. So for those who have been unhappy with the removal of the grant oversight language in other omnibus bills, Chair Klevorn and I worked to get the Senate to agree to put it in, and it is no longer just session law. It will be statute moving forward as long as this passes off the floor today and the governor affixes his signature whenever that happens at presentment. So there's a lot of things that the DFL and every party should be able to learn about how do you do a conference committee moving forward, because as an institutionalist, this place deserves the level of collegiality that was afforded to me and my team. So with that, I will not be making a motion to refuse to adopt. I think that we should move on to third reading. Thank you.
All in favor of the motion to adopt the Conference Committee report on House File 1830, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. No! The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by conference.
Third reading, House File number 1830, as amended by conference.
Third reading as amended by conference. Discussion. I recognize the member from Meeker, Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. While I appreciate the work done on this bill, I still am concerned about the creation of the State Emblems Redesign Commission. Now, I spoke about this before. I think our state emblem and flag should reflect who we are, including our history. I'm concerned that the makeup of the commission, while quite inclusive, is lacking. History groups, besides the State Historical Society, should have a place. For example, the State Territorial Pioneers, County Historical Societies, other voices need to be included that more directly reflect our past. Now, there are concerns. Some are saying that, well, we need to be, I don't know, more inclusive, that more relevant, more modern history. Well, along those lines, even though I don't think that's the direction we need to go, I'd like to keep what we have now. I envision a flag, purple bottom, yellow top. And in the yellow top, we have goalposts with a football sailing to the left. And if that doesn't reflect Minnesota history of the last 50 years, I don't know what does.
Further discussion to the repassage of the Conference Committee report of House File 1830. I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise with enthusiasm, like Representative Nash, like our state gov team, for this bill and this subject. The state government and elections bill is not the sexiest bill, but it is the workhorse of our government. It is the workhorse of our democracy, and it is the scaffolding and the foundation for the work we do. Our state government is how we operationalize democracy, how we come together to make decisions, to resolve differences, to care for each other, and to provide for the common good. And this bill, with what's in it, in all of its provisions, will make that work of Minnesota that we do here more effective, more responsive, and more accountable because of the work that folks did this year. And that is in no small part because of the work to ensure that the voices of Minnesotans, all Minnesotans, of every region, of every race, of every background, and of every generation, are at the center. They're at the center of our democracy, and that they're at the center of our decision making. And we spent a lot of time talking about that. So I am just going to be brief and talk about two things that I think we all can be proud of, which is this bill invests in our proud tradition of local election administration. The administration that our counties and our cities, that the 30,000 men and women who are election workers do. It puts them and it supports them. The voter fund, which Representative Coulter championed, is a really important thing we're doing. We are saying that the state is going to have a commitment to ensuring that our local elections administration is funded and that they have what they need. This is a huge deal when we rely on local elections administration. It also protects and our local election workers from harassment, from intimidation, and from the kind of stuff we have seen rise. And I know from our conversations in committee and on the floor that is something that we all can be proud of and we are all invested in when we think about those workers and ensuring that both our systems and our election workers are protected. This bill puts Minnesotans at the center. It puts the folks who are doing the work to run our state government at the center, and it puts Minnesotans at the center. It expands voter access. It ensures that voters, not corporations, are the ones calling the shots. And so I am very, very proud of this bill. I am very, very grateful for the conversations that we've had. And I think that this will go a long way to ensure that Minnesota's democracy is both inclusive and effective in the work we do. So members, I'd ask you to vote yes.
Further discussion on the repassage of House File 1830 is amended by conference. I recognize the member from Brown, Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We just heard from Representative Greenman expressing that election bill is not sexy. And I think, Representative Greenman, I know why. It's because you didn't include any Republicans in the efforts. It's not bipartisan. How could it be sexy? In fact, there were 73 election bills introduced this session. 25 of those bills came from GOP authors. One of those GOP bills got a hearing, and in spite of getting a hearing and being broadly supported, it's not in the bill. There is no bipartisan participation in the elections bill. In fact, our governor, as recently as 2019, stated he thought election bills should be bipartisan. And in fact, he expressed that he wouldn't sign one that wasn't, but it looks like this one is headed for the governor's desk and likely to get his signature in spite of his earlier statements. You talked about investing in local elections. Well, they have to invest. You need to invest in local elections because you're requiring to spend a lot more money. We've extended and added this early voting period of 18 days, which is, yeah, that's good, I guess, that people have more time to vote and put their ballot in a machine. But every local precinct that has to set this up is going to have to hire the people to operate that, have to staff be there every day, and volunteer election judges, I don't think, are likely to show up for 18 straight days. It just doesn't seem like that's possible or likely. It's a pretty dramatic change in the way our local elections are actually conducted. I will congratulate the DFL for tamping down the ranked choice voting effort that was made during the session. Even the study is no longer specifically aimed at ranked choice voting, and in fact, will be conducted by the Secretary of State instead of a partisan panel. That's good. Ranked choice voting is a very bad idea that has very little broad support across the state of Minnesota. However, national popular vote is still part of this bill. We're going to join the compact. This has been around a long time. We thought it'd be a good idea to actually say, you know, after 4 years of being in the compact, if the compact isn't successful, we would have to renew our membership in that, but that also was eliminated. It's likely to see a constitutional challenge. Just last night, it seemed that Representative Greenman was quite concerned about constitutional challenges, but her concern fades when it comes to this bill, because we know this will be challenged. In fact, national popular vote will focus attention, and really the results of our elections will be focused on the largest states. And Minnesota is not the largest state, in case you didn't know, but states like California, New York, and Texas will carry the weight, and our electors will no longer be tied to our voters, but to the voters in the most populous states of this country. This is a bad bill for elections, not because all the provisions are bad, but because the way it was assembled, the way it was put together, was in a very partisan fashion. Many of these provisions we could have worked together on and developed bipartisan support, but that was not the method that was chosen by our chair, Representative Freiberg. I do thank you for your work. I thank you all for your work. I believe you were sincere, but you were not inclusive, and it's a shame. I also want to thank our researcher, Lori Kusno, for her hard work on the Elections Committee, and thank my fellow members of the committee for their hard work as we did the best we could in a very partisan environment. Please vote red.
Further discussion to the repassage of House File 1830 is submitted by conference. I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm disgusted and appalled that we are disenfranchising every Minnesota voter, because it doesn't matter if this passes. It will not matter what our votes were in a presidential election. The decision of our electors will be decided by votes outside us, dominated by votes not Minnesotans. How disgusting can it be? It's horrid that we are taking away and ignoring our voters and abdicating and disenfranchising them. I am appalled.
Further discussion on the repassage of House File 1830 is amended by conference. I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Speaker. This is going a lot faster than I expected. So I guess these are my closing remarks. The elections portion of this bill protects our election workers, makes voting more accessible, and provides clarity on who is funding our elections. So we heard from our cities and counties about the need to have a sustainable source of funding for election purposes, and I'm proud that this bill sets up a new voting operations, technology, and elections resources, or voter fund. We heard testimony from the director of our campaign finance board about the desperate straits our public financing system is in. Specifically, he said that our public financing system is dying on the vine. More and more candidates are bypassing our public financing system, even though public financing is a surefire way to reduce the influence of special interests. So this bill will increase the public subsidy statutory appropriation. It includes several other budget provisions, including the state match under the Help America Vote Act and the redistricting litigation fees. It also appropriates HAVA money directly to the Secretary of State. We're the only state that requires legislative appropriation of these funds, and if you recall from previous years, this funding would get held up as leverage in unrelated legislative negotiations, and that was putting our election security at risk. It includes important policy provisions like early voting, facilitating elections for post-secondary students. It helps out our census workers. It gives voters time off for early voting. It adopts the National Popular Vote Compact, which I'm proud of, and I'll talk a bit more in 1 second. It helps voters for whom English is not their first language, and it modernizes our campaign finance system. I covered the extent to which this bill is bipartisan pretty thoroughly when the bill went off the floor the first time. I don't expect that members committed my remarks to memory, but out of respect for your time, I will not repeat my comments from then. Suffice it to say, there are numerous bipartisan provisions in this bill, and that includes the national popular vote provision, which has a GOP co-author. And I'd also add that Minnesota's voters will count as much as voters in any other state under that provision, and that's the way elections should work. Nobody's votes should matter more than other people's, and that's the way it currently works under our outdated electoral college system. This bill will ensure every eligible voter can exercise their civic duty to participate in our elections without barriers meant to suppress the vote. These are provisions Minnesotans want. I'm proud that the State Emblems Redesign Commission is included in there. I think it's high time we have a flag and a state seal that we can be proud of that are distinguishable from other states and don't contain offensive imagery. So I'm really excited to support this bill. I hope members on both sides of the aisle will join me in voting green.
Further discussion to the repassage of House File 1830 as amended by conference. I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Hewitt.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I got to tell you, it's been a great honor to be on this committee as the vice chair. I kind of relate this experience to when I worked in the hospital in surgery with a thoracic surgeon. Chair Klevorn is that thoracic surgeon. She knows this bill like a thoracic surgeon knows the chest of a patient. She gets in there, digs in there, and does what's right. And most people that know me, I might be that 10,000-foot level person that, is up there, but Chair Klevorn did not let me stay at 10,000 feet. She would bring me in, make sure that I knew what the bill was, knew what we were going to talk about, made sure I could support what we were going to talk about. I do want to say a lot about my Republican colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Lead Nash, you were great to work with. Like you said, we probably don't agree on a lot, but we found common ground. I'm looking forward to working with you in IT and communications for EMS and fire and police. We had those great discussions, but I look forward with more discussions that we're going to have. Representative Koznick, I'll miss you. And all the others that sat on the committee. It was a very great committee, and one of the things that I do want to say about the bill that touched me the most is my own colleagues here that grew up as kids of state workers. And for a child in 6th grade or even 3rd grade to know when the state fiscal year is, when it ends and when it starts. And when they shared the story about if we're going to go camping or we're going to have to eat at Grandma and Grandpa's until the state contract is done. That really sunk to me a lot about how that was. And to think that child that depends on all of us here and how this bill goes through and how we keep our state functioning with these great state employees that we have. That's why I will vote green, so we don't have 3rd and 6th graders of our great state workers worried about if they're going to have dinner tomorrow night. So thank you, Chair Klevorn. Thank you to all the great members of state finance. It's been a great year, and I look forward to seeing you next year.
I recognize the member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, once again, the state government finance bill covers a lot of the needful things. We funded AMPERS, we funded a lot of other things. I still remember the day in committee where we talked about public television. So that was a very good thing to do, and for those that were on the committee, you know how hard it was for me to get through that, and I appreciate your help and grace because Mr. Rogers matters. I want to thank our nonpartisan staff, Helen Roberts, Matt Gehring, Chelsea Griffin. They were great. They are the epitome of professional. They do amazing work. They work long hours. They have forgotten more about state government than the chair or I are ever going to remember. And I've been on the committee for 9 years now, so I know a lot. For a lot of the good things that have been said about this bill, if you remember my quote from the day of the first passage off this floor, from Oscar Wilde, it is the bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. That remains true. The bill still has a lot of increased spending in it. Based on the numbers that I've been able to run, it's approximately a 41% increase over base, and that's also quite a lot. That's 41% increase over spending. It does grant new powers or expanded powers to the executive branch and to the Attorney's General office, which I find somewhat troubling. And you know, sometimes the measure of a bill for what is good is also, on the other side of the coin, is for what it missed. And I will point out, and I believe you have a letter on your desk from the Council on Asian Pacific Minnesotans that I had signed and had distributed. Members, we had in the first iteration of the conference report a funding for API Council to bring it into a little closer parity with some of the other councils, and it was agreed upon, and then it suddenly disappeared. Just disappeared, and I can only surmise why, and I'm disappointed that that became reality, and it was not because of the chairs, so I am disappointed in its exclusion. You know, our researchers on our side, Lori for elections and Ryan, have been fantastic to work with. I was the one that Chair Torkelson mentioned who had an elections provision. I got so excited that in the first week or so of the session that I put in a hearing request that my bill was going to go to elections and get a hearing, and Representative Torkelson asked me what sort of magic I had in my hat, and I said, well, I guess it's just a good bill, and we're going to move forward with it because it had wide support from the League of Minnesota Cities and both county organizations and a lot of elections administrators. They said, wow, this is a great bill. It's going to help clear up a lot of confusion. And it went to committee. We had good conversation, and wouldn't you know it, it didn't make it anywhere. But so once again, in the words of Oscar Wilde, a vote for this bill is to vote to expand the bureaucracy to the benefit of the expanding bureaucracy. So members, I would vote. I will be voting no. I would encourage you to vote no. And once again, thank you for the effort, Madam Chair. I do appreciate the relationship and the effort. But as the sole Republican conferee and lead, I would ask members to vote no. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Bahner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you, members. And I just want to say this is a really incredible bill for many, many reasons. And I think, one, I want to start with really thanking our Republican members. Because I do think that during state government, while we may not always agree on the substance, we had a really incredible relationship with our partners on the other side of the aisle. A lot of really thoughtful questions from Representative Nadeau, a lot of very thoughtful commentary from Lead Nash, for example, and all of that was really incredible. But I want to highlight really quickly some of the incredible investments in this bill around things like cybersecurity grants, modernization. It's always been my belief that government should be about the people. It should meet people where they are. And many of these technology innovations will help us do just that, to make government actually work for real people. And so I'm really excited about that. And I also want to make a commitment, too, to Representative Nash, because I know that when things move fast around here, sometimes we don't always have the time to stop for a minute and have certain conversations. And I know that, for example, while the age-appropriate design code did not move forward at the moment, I will tell you it has always been my intent to work very closely with some of our friends on the other side of the aisle. And I do believe that when it comes back next year, it will have lots of support from our Republican colleagues. I feel confident about that. And I also want to say one of the things that we don't acknowledge in this bill, but I want to make it important because our staff is so critical to us. This bill also has some really big investments for our revisor's office. We all know the incredible work that they do behind the scenes, trying to put together our bills on a moment's notice, and they're using tools that just don't meet the task. And so this is an incredible opportunity for us to give our staff the tools that they need to be really effective and to help all of us do the work that we do every day. Those are all really great. And I want to say to Representative Nash that we did hear your bill, and I know that I actually support your bill. I think it's a great bill. I do. And I think that we will probably have time over the interim to have more conversations about that bill as well. And I will be frank with you, I hope it makes it into the next iteration. I really do. And with that, I just want to say thank you one more time to Chair Klevorn for her incredible grace under pressure, for her willingness to bring all of our members in, to have those conversations, even the tough conversations. I think that the conversation with our friends from the other side of the aisle was both productive, it was useful, and I think it made this bill better. And I am really appreciative of all of those great comments, that great discussion, and I hope that we can continue to do that in the next year as well. So thank you to our Republican colleagues, thank you to our staff, thank you Vice Chair Hewitt and Chair Klevorn, as well as Chair Freiberg, for all of their tremendous work this year. Thank you. Vote green.
Further discussion on the repassage of House File 1830 as amended by conference. I recognize the member from Stearns, the Minority Leader, Representative Damuth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A point of parliamentary inquiry, please.
Representative Damuth, please state your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, could you inform the body if there will be any members voting remotely today?
Representative Damuth, there are 2 members of this body who will be voting remotely today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could you inform the body when that was approved and who those members might be?
That was approved while the clerk was taking the roll. Actually, please hold, Representative Damuth. I want to make sure we get you an accurate answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Damuth, to your point of parliamentary inquiry, I was informed by the Speaker shortly after the quorum call that Representatives Katiza Watun and Representatives Kozlowski were approved to vote remotely pursuant to Rule 10.05.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I, at my desk, have a sheet that we are given. It is updated regularly each day. And right now, I am seeing Representative Kozlowski still listed on here and has not been crossed off. And Mr. Speaker, I just want to, for the body and to make sure that we are looking at the same rule, Article 10, 10.05B says a member may attend and vote during floor sessions or committee meetings via remote means if practicable, if for reasons related to the health or safety of the member or the member's family, and with advanced permission of the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And I find it concerning, to say the least, that we are voting
Representative Damath, you were seeking a point of parliamentary inquiry.
Yes.
I did not give you the floor. Are you, what?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, you're raising a point of order. State your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy to start over with that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What rule are you citing, Representative Damath? And I would note to your parliamentary inquiry, Representative Kozlowski is crossed off on my list. I'm not sure why she wasn't crossed off on your list. But under what rule are you citing a point of order, Representative Damath?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do appreciate, I know maybe my list has not been updated from your prior note, and I appreciate the staff work that is done, so I in no way am disrespecting our staff and the work that they do so regularly. Point of order under 10.05, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Damath, before I recognize you for that point of order, I would like to correct myself that it is the custom and usage of this chamber to use the proper gendering of our members, and that the proper pronoun to use was they. And so I would readjust my comments that they have been excused on my list. Representative Damath.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of order under 10.05, the remote House operations. Again, 10.05B, a member may attend and vote during floor sessions or committee meetings via remote means, if practicable, for reasons related to the health and safety of the member or the member's family, and with advanced permission of the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And my point of order, Mr. Speaker, is we have taken the roll. We had no remote voters at the time that we took the roll. I know that as this rule was crafted, it was crafted very carefully to make sure that it was only to be used for the health or safety of the member or the member's family with that advanced permission. And Mr. Speaker, my concern is that as we are voting on an elections bill, that we are making sure that we are voting appropriately and according to rule in this chamber before we actually take a vote. And I wanted to raise that point of order, and I hope that you would find that well taken.
Further advice on Representative Damath's point of order. I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would advise the Speaker to find the point of order not well taken. Rule 10.05, Part B, requires advance permission of the Speaker of the House of Representatives before the voting can occur. The votes that are under issue here have not yet occurred. The excusal did happen in advance as required by the rule, so I would encourage you to find the point of order not well taken.
Members, I've considered advice from Representative Damath and from Representative Freiberg, and I find the point of order is not well taken. We are on discussion of the repassage of House File 1830 as amended by conference. Closing remarks, I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Hennepin, Representative Klevorn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I find state government pretty exciting. I take exception to the fact that this is called an elections bill. It is partly an elections bill, but it's so important that we have a functional state government that works for Minnesotans. Members, it's a great bill. There are many good provisions, and it will serve as the foundation for our government going forward for decades to come. Please vote green.
The clerk will take the roll on the repassage of House File 1830 as amended by conference.
Okay, they ready? Clerk will-
Would the clerk please call the names of the members who have been approved to vote remotely pursuant to House Rule 10.05?
Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, aye.
Katiza Watun votes aye. Kozlowski.
Kozlowski votes aye.
Kozlowski votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 69 ayes and 62 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by conference and its title agreed to. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file herewith returned as amended by the Senate, in which amendments the concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House file number 197, a resolution memorializing Congress to resolve the requirements that have been met to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. The message is signed Thomas S. Bahner, Secretary of the Senate. Bahner moves that the House concur in the Senate amendments to House File number 197 and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Senate.
I recognize the author, the member from Hennepin, Representative Bahner, who will explain the Senate amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is my motion to concur with the Senate. There were some minor drafting differences in the language, including the removal of some things that had an accounting for specific states that were removed, and one minor provision that just discussed the relevance of this in terms of combating discrimination. And with that, while they are relatively minor, we do wish to concur with the Senate and their judgment. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I ask you to vote green.
Is there any discussion on the Senate amendments? I recognize the member from Stearns, the Minority Leader, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as we've seen that the Senate has made some minor adjustments to this resolution as we debated it just a week ago or earlier, it didn't necessarily get better. It didn't necessarily get worse. And I feel that we all are equal without just a piece of paper or a resolution. Vote your conscience.
There being no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to concur with the Senate amendments, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by the Senate.
Third reading, House File Number 197, as amended by the Senate.
Third reading as amended by the Senate. Discussion. Are there any members seeking recognition before I recognize the author of the bill? I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Bahner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. I want to say thank you to everyone here for helping with this resolution. Frankly, women have waited 200 years. We've waited over 100 years since the right to vote. We have continually worked over generation to generation to ensure equal treatment under the law for men and women, and I would appreciate a green vote.
The clerk will take the roll on the repassage of House File 197 as amended by the Senate. Members, please vote. The clerk will call the names of the members who are voting remotely.
Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, aye.
Katiza Watun votes aye. Kozlowski.
Kozlowski votes aye.
Kozlowski votes aye.
Have all members voted who wish to vote? The clerk will close the roll. There being 70 ayes and 51 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by the Senate and its title agreed to. I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a minute, I'm going to make a motion to recess, but want to announce first that Rules Committee will be meeting at 1:30 in Capitol 120 to take up the corrections bill. And with that, I move to recess at the call of the Speaker.
Are there any announcements related to the recess? I recognize the member from Brown, Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will Majority Leader Long yield for a question?
He will yield, Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Representative Long, I was looking at my calendar this morning, and on my calendar it says that I would be home planting soybeans today because we would be adjourned. It's a sunny day, a nice day for a farmer to get out in the field and get his work done. But it seems like we haven't gotten our work done here. So can you just tell me what happened? I was all ready to go home and get to work.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Representative Torkelson. Best laid plans sometimes take longer to work through, and we've been working together. We have several bills left to do, but we have several days to do them in, and we'll get our work done on time.
Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you. Well, the definition of on time apparently has changed. Mr. Speaker, would Representative Long yield for another question?
He will yield, Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you. It's my understanding, now I was not able to attend because I was here working on the floor, but it's my understanding that the majority had a press conference yesterday, and at that press conference you were liberally blaming us for not getting the work done. Can you explain to me, Mr. Majority Leader, how it's possible that it's our fault that you are not getting your work done?
Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the question. Well, I wasn't at the press conference, but I did, when I was asked by Leader Dameth the other day, mention that on some bills we've had constructive and focused debate. I think the state government finance bill was a good example of one where we did have that. On some bills we've had several hours of debate that members of the media put in quotes because they recognized that it was not substantive. We did have 50 amendments filed on the Uber Lyft bill, many of which were not germane and were blatantly out of order. We had in the Senate 270 amendments filed to the bonding bill, which is a pretty clear delay tactic as well. So we've been touch and go, but I'm hoping that between now and the end we can work together to get the job done.
Representative Torkelson.
Point of parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Torkelson, please state your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, what conference committee reports are at the desk available for us to take up right now?
Representative Torkelson, there is currently nothing at the desk.
Point of parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Please state your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Which conference committees have still not closed?
Representative Torkelson, I think that would be more appropriate for you to ask the majority leader to yield to that question. Representative Torkelson.
Mr. Speaker, will the majority leader yield to another question?
He will yield, Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Majority Leader Long, which conference committees have still not closed?
Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the question. We are likely to be taking up the transportation bill tomorrow. I believe that we will be taking up the tax bill on Sunday, and our intent is to take up the HHS bill on Monday. So we are going to be working through, and we'll finish before our mandated adjournment date.
Members, please be respectful of our colleagues' right to hold the floor without making comments or remarks or loud noises. Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. One more point of parliamentary inquiry on my behalf. Would any of the outstanding conference committee reports be heard in the House first when they're available?
Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure I understood the question. We will be taking up the bills in the order I mentioned. The Senate is going to be bringing over the Human Services bill, as I mentioned before, for us to take up this afternoon. So that'll be a Senate file.
All those in favor of the motion to reset, I recognize the member from Stearns, the minority leader, Representative Dameth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And before we adjourn, I just want to make sure that everyone has heard correctly that with full government control by the Democrats, the work is not done. The Republicans are not holding anything up, and we are waiting for the conference committee work to be done so we can finish this budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Erdahl, do you have an announcement pertaining to the recess to the call of the chair? Representative Erdahl, for what purpose do you rise?
I'd like to ask the majority leader a question.
Representative Long will yield. Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Long, real quick, because one item that I'm a little bit concerned about has not been mentioned yet. Do you have any idea when capital investment might be coming up?
Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't see the chair on the floor, otherwise I would have turned to him. But I know that there are active conversations, and I know that we will get the bill done by Monday. I don't have a date for you at the moment.
Representative Dameth, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make a motion to adjourn until Saturday at 11 a.m. And I request a roll call.
Representative Dameth makes a motion to adjourn. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. The motion is non-debatable. The clerk will take the roll. Representative O'Neill votes aye.
O'Neill votes aye.
Will the clerk please call the names of the members who are voting remotely?
Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, no.
Katiza Watun votes no. Kozlowski.
Kozlowski votes no.
Kozlowski votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 63 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail. I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion to recess. Excuse me. Just want to make sure you were paying attention. To recess to the call of Speaker.
Representative Long moves a recess to the call of the Speaker. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The motion prevails and the House stands in recess.